This reference right here, although looking quite complex, is actually really easy. So I want to show you how to sketch this in a really loose way using ink and watercolor. And I also bought this crazy 100% cotton watercolor paper here from Amazon. So I'm really interested to try this out to see if it'll level up my sketches. The other challenge that we have here with this reference, how do I get depth in this reference, in this painting? Because it's got so much detail, we don't want it all to get lost in all the different colors. So I'm going to show you later how I'm going to approach adding that depth. So the first step is that we've got a plan. So with this sketch, I'm going to actually draw a border. So we're going to frame the work here. So let's just start here at the top and draw a line following that top edge. And then we come down, and I'm just following that edge here, and it's okay if it's a little bit wobbly. Okay. So there I've got a framework to work within. Now the next step is to use dots to lay out the proportions of these buildings. So I've got 2 dots here in the top corners. Let's make sure we leave room for the top of the building. Come down about here, and a dot on the other side there. And then right in the middle, let's put a dot there. Okay, and so let's just check here. We'll put the dot up here for the top of the tower there. And then we come down just slightly, and there'll be right in the middle is the top of the other building. Okay, and now we want to get the total height. So the total height of the building, 2.5. So we get that same width there, and then we go down 1, and that is 2, and then about half this. So come down to there. Okay, and we come down the same on this side, 1, 2.5, and that'll fit our building in there really nicely. Plus we've got some room there at the bottom. Okay, now we've got a plan. We can actually work out. Oh no, hang on, I'll do this. We can also add the halfway points between those 2 dots, just so that when we're drawing the line down the middle, we know where to draw it. Okay, so we've got all those dots. Now we can move on to the main shapes. So we don't want to go into windows and drawing the bikes yet. Let's draw these main shapes so we've got a framework to draw those details in. So we'll start at the top here with this really nice detail in this building, and we're just going to come down each side. And we want to come down to this point. So make those nice steps. Okay, and I didn't actually count the steps. I'm just was doing it by eye, what looked right. We come down there. There we go. Okay, and then we come down this way, and there's see the little white sculpture there. Not sure what that is, a little gargoyle or something. And then we want to come down from this point, so give it a nice shape there, and then come down, and then come down on this side too. Trying to make that the same angle. And then we can see the other building here. And we're just looking at the silhouette, just something interesting there. Start at this point, but this point is lower. So we'll come down to there. Okay, so now I've got those top buildings. Now let's go down the side here. Now we might miss some of these dots, but that's okay. It's just a rough guide. It wasn't quite in line. Okay. Okay, and then we have a door here. So I just give a little hint of some of the things we have there. Come down this way, now right down the middle again. And it's really important that we make sure these are parallel. We can go back up again, making a really nice sound on the paper. It's the gap between the building. It's very loose. And there's quite a wide gap there that I've happened to make, so I'll make this one a bit wider too. So I'm going to come past those dots. That's okay. It's going to look slightly different than the reference. There's a door there, a door there. Okay, and then there's a bush here. Just exaggerate some of that leafiness. Now this bottom section here is about the same as this half here. We'll come down that same distance. So that's where that comes down to, coming across. There's like a little sign hanging in the water there. And then bike handle there. And I might extend that border down there. It's for the water. Okay, you can see I've really set up the sketch here with those main shapes, dividing them up. And that makes it so much easier when we're drawing lots of windows. But we still need to divide this up even further. Okay, so now let's add in these 2 trees that are on each side. I think we need to add these in without making them too. So we're going to draw the trunk going up, and I'm just looking at the reference. Now this doesn't have to be accurate at all. We go off to do a branch, stop, and then come back and sort of twist the line so it touches and overlaps. And then we go up a bit further where you think there might be another branch. And we're not doing the little branches, just the main branches. Twist over the line. See a nice branch going up there. Okay, now we've got that tree. You can draw little lines like this. Branch them off. Have to draw enough to make it interesting. Starts there and then goes up, and it leans towards up here. So it's good to have a natural bend. There are quite a few nice branches that come out towards that. And this one goes all the way up here, quite skinny at the top. Okay, so we've got our trees. And when we draw details on the buildings, it doesn't matter if the windows overlap those branches. Okay, we'll make our way from the top to the bottom. So first of all, let's draw a line linking the top of the building here, okay? And then work out where that top arch is. I'd say it goes to there. So put a dot there, and then an arch like this. So then I can see where it sits in there, and then down. The next step I'm going to do is divide this into 3. So we have 1, 2, 3. So this section here is where that door is. So let's draw in that bottom third that plaster that goes across like that. We've also got on this building here, this grey, dark grey building, a line across here. So a bit further down from this one, we have a line here like that. Okay, that'll help us divide up this top section. Now in this top section we need to divide that into 3. So 2 lines here, 1 and 2. Okay, now we've got 3 sections there. Just dividing these buildings up. And on this building here, let's put a line here, just right in the middle, in line with those corners there. And that's just this white section just above the windows. So we have another one down here, okay? Now let's put one halfway between. It's about there. And then one halfway between these 2. And the same down the bottom. Starting to divide that building up. So we'll go back over here and we want to put in these windows. So what I'm going to do is just put a line for the bottom of each window. That's just a starting point for me, just to see if that looks right. So I can say between here and here, about 2/3 up is the top line there. 2/3 up. And now we can draw the window frame. Locking my wrist, and I'm drawing these lines straight with my elbow. So we can do the same within those 2 lines, just trying to keep them straight vertical like this. If you're not quite doing it right, just draw a second line. You can see how even that is, even though it's loose and I didn't use a ruler to measure everything. There's a window up here, so that's an important window to put in here now. Put this one in. The next big shapes on this building here is these red shutters, and they are super cool, like going to make this sketch look really nice. So you could just draw a straight line here like this. I'm thinking about halfway across because I need to close. So it's like getting this half of this square and putting it on this side here. And then there are these little windows on the side here. So they're just on the side. Leave a little gap there. Now before we draw the door, there's a person right here. So the door would go to about here. So the person I've got there would be about that high, but then move down a little bit. So make sure you consider that height of that door and make the person a little bit shorter, but starting here. If you're on Patreon and have this reference downloaded, you could zoom into the person. Otherwise, you can just draw the figure or how I'm drawing it. We just draw the head like this, and then we're just drawing the outline of the body. So you go down to the body like this, and then we're just going to ignore the bag for now, and you go straight to the leg, come to a point. Hopefully that's not too big. No, yeah, make sure, have another look at the size of the door, make sure it's not too big. And then do a little foot, and then come back, another little foot in the air. Got our arm. Now we can draw the arm. So we left that till a little bit once we've got those main shapes. Now we can draw a bag as well. And why not put that in? A little bit of hair. I wouldn't attempt at this size to draw the face. It's way too small. So we've got one figure there, and the other figure is here. So he's a bit further down than this person. So first we go around the hat, and then he's got his head. We come back for the hoodie, and we're just going to go straight down there, and then slightly angled forward so his foot is resting in line with his head. I think I could have angled the body in a little bit more actually, having a look at that. Between this here and here, the door comes just past halfway. I'd say about there. Down, up again, and down. And 2 windows. So just draw the two lines there like that, and then 2 lines like this, and then we can slightly change them, come out a bit more like that. I've also got 2 boxes here. 2 little windows, and then a square here, 2 little boxes. We'll do the door here on this side, and we'll go up for that sign there, the budget still. How far does it go across? Not that far. Down, trying to make it the same width here, and down. And then we've got this box here. And then, okay, and this last window right here on this building, that. Now there's two buildings here hidden by the trees, but let's still add those windows there so that we know that they are buildings when we do the watercolor, because they might get lost otherwise. So we just subtly add in some of the detail. We're just going to leave an impression that this is a building by adding windows behind those branch. Just trying to keep them relatively even, show a little bit of this side. And then we have windows, just simple windows again. I have no idea how these work on the floors of the building. Seems like the height of each window is different as they go down. I think that's enough for those window main shapes within the buildings. Before we get into all the decorations and the really fine details, let's draw these bikes here. So this section here I would do in one line segments. So I'm going to do all these bikes on the left here in one line. So we'll start off with the wheel here and then just let your pen search its way around for the next one. It just keeps it really loose. Make sure you go into the middle where the center of that wheel is. And then you've got a basket and then another wheel. Some handlebars, it's down. It's okay if there's mistakes, it's really rough. And on this side here, start with a wheel. They'll give us the size, the general size of the bike. Handlebars, frame, and just seeing those wheels just makes you think Amsterdam. Okay, now we can get more into the details. So I'm going to start here at the bottom because that's where I've just finished up the bikes and draw this sign. Okay, and as I make my way up, I can add some things like steps. When you're doing all this, it's a great idea, just as I did with the bikes, to create these one-line outlines. So if I'm drawing a plant, I'm just like this. I'm just drawing the outline of the plant and the. Okay, and then when we're going up the buildings, we can go through and do all the decoration, some of the window frames, and add some bars. This one here, 6 boxes. The main thing is getting them this with his divide up the windows a bit. And add an arch on the top of each one. How about we do the same? Instead of going through, we'll go through each one actually. Top line here, then dividing line. Just divide it all up. Now these ones actually look open here. So I'm just putting a bit of an angle at the top. But first we'll do the white boxes here. You can add one there. And then see how they go in here. They just angle in because they're open. We'll try and get those looking like they're opening in to let some air in. So angle in, that same angle, top sections. In here there's a nice detail. So add little squares within these red panels with these shutters. I think these red shutters will stand out really nicely. Bricks here that arch over the top of the windows. So let's first draw little arches on each one. This, okay, we've already done those. Now, the big arch will meet in between. So there'll be a bigger detailed arch like this. And then it goes, joins up in the middle. And we can draw a spot there for those white bricks. When I'm drawing a line just with my eye, just to see where it's going. But it's had those little crosses here, these little bolts that hold the building together. And on this side too, there are these little lines. On these side windows, we can add a little bit of detail, sort of lines there, just like that. And on the door here, probably adds just a little bit of detail. Okay, we've done the hard work, we've done all the line work with all the detail. So how do I add depth to this sketch with the color? What I'm going to try and do is use contrast. So we've got this section down here that's quite dark, and also the windows are quite dark. Let's see if we can, maybe the trees could be dark. The foreground has the contrast and the background is a bit lighter. I'm also going to use gradients, so color gradients on the faces here, so that adds that sense of light coming on the buildings. Because we just don't want these buildings to be flat color. So I've got my round 12 brush, and we're going to add water and start with the sky. So this is just a wet on wet technique where we block in with water the top sky. And so I recommend you have some quite thick paper. And the first color we're going to use is cerulean blue. So we're going to focus mostly at the top. So we'll make it darker at the top. So just swipe it across the top there. And then wash your brush, dry it out. And let's see, I've got my paper towel in my hand, and we can just drag this down a bit. Drag it down to the water. If you don't have watercolor paper, just do a very light wash here. There we go. You can see in the reference that there's that gradient. And whenever I'm looking at references, I'm looking to exaggerate those gradient, those colors. I've got my round 6, and probably could be better to use around 8 here, but I have that on order, so I'll wait for that one to come. We're going to start with the building on the left here and use burnt sienna. So I've got a nice amount of wash here for burnt sienna. Now, we're also going to add some rose, just to give it that red brick look. Okay, Now as we go down, I'm going to try and water this out so it's really saturated at the top and very light at the bottom, just like we did here before. Going down, this might go into the sky a bit, might go in a lot. Okay, that was my fault for going a bit close there. So if I need more paint, instead of getting paint, I'm getting water. Dragging that paint down. It's getting lighter and lighter now. And there's even a little bit around, you can see this area here. The next building here, we're going Payne's Grey, some ultramarine to it. Okay, so start at the top again. Try and go around things that are white. The next colour is Burnt Umber. So we have Burnt Umber here. Again, we do the same thing. We'll avoid the windows and the tree, still making it lighter at the bottom. And then we come down to this point. This is my attempt at giving that depth. Even though there's a flat building, you can see the sun hits it here and it's lighter at the bottom. Now in contrast, this front edge right here is going to be darker. So let's get this saturation that I use at the top and go across. This will leave that sign. This tree here, I don't want to do it straight green. As you can see, you can hardly even see it's green. But we'll add Viridian Green first and then Payne's Grey. So you can actually leave a bit of white. Can you see they're just slightly green? Don't want to make them too strong just yet. We've got the cerulean blue that we had for the sky. Let's add that to the windows. Add the blue here, a bit of blue in this window. Just going around seeing where I can see blue. Some of them not blue, these are very dark. There might be little sections of blue. These red window covers, so I will start with cadmium red, starting on the side and just bring it down to this bottom window. These trees, I'm going to try and make them very dark because I have a feeling that if they're the same color, same tone or value, they will get lost in the background. So that's my experiment later. Okay, so now we're going to do these dark windows here. So we have Payne's Grey, so just enough to see the line work. These windows here, one more window. With this section down here, I can wet it again, just like I did the sky. So wet this section down the bottom, and that has to mimic in this a little bit down there, just to add a little bit of a hint of that building on that side. Okay, we've done all the flat color. Now I need to add in some shadows. So we go for ultramarine, get a lot of ultramarine, there we go, and then a little bit of permanent rose. So make sure it's not too thick. We're going to go through the main buildings here with a bit of shadow, and especially in the windows. So in the windows here, make sure we've got a nice shadow to give that depth to that side of the building. Just bring that across the top and then down the left hand side. And keeping in mind the sun's coming this way. What have we got on this side? Okay, so these windows, the shutters especially, make sure on the right hand side of the shutter, the shadow's cast on that side like that. And then inside, tops, a bit more in there, that would give a bit more depth. Between the buildings as well, everything would be just going to the right, the shadow would just be going to the right. The sun coming this way. The people. So this tree here is creating a really nice big shadow going across this building. Branches just across the building. Now this is where you cross your fingers and you hope you don't spoil your sketch. Thin tip on your brush, it's easier. Now I want to bring these trees in this front section out. So the buildings are set back and the trees are forward. So now let's add some more ultramarine to this, and then a little bit of Payne's Grey, but not too much. Now let's see. This is the point where I'm taking a bit of a risk. I'll do the trees and then I might do the bottom section with the bigger brush. So this is exaggerating the reference. So I'm doing this knowing that it's not exactly following the reference, but I'm trying to create an interesting composition. Now let's cover these up. See how much darker that is? And then this front sign backwards and forth, and you can leave little bits of white. This shadow a bit of depth, and we can add a bit more ultramarine here. And that should blend in because it's all still wet. Okay, I've let that dry, and so we want to add a bit of texture. So we've got lots of flat color, we've got the shadow. Now to add interest, we add splatters. So I have this really old brush here, which is great for doing splatters because you can flick it and not worry if you wreck the bristles. People ask me why I add splatters, and I think it adds texture, which adds interest, but also it gives a bit more of a dynamic feel, like the picture is alive. So there's movement and energy. Also helps with adding gradient to your color. So this section here, it's very light going up to the dark. You can add some even darker saturation sprayed across there, and you'll see the splatters in those light sections, and that gives that idea of bricks as well. So that was a permanent rose with burnt sienna and then the cadmium red. So I got that there. Then I hold the pen and I hold the brush and I just put my index finger on the top so I can see that the red shows up a lot more. So that means I've got the right amount. And we can do the same thing with the Payne's grey on the building. So I'm not trying to change it too much. Just add that interesting texture so that whole area of watercolor is quite plain. But now it's got some energy in it. What I don't want is huge blobs. Oh, don't want too big of blobs. I don't mind so much in the water if it's blobby like that. We can come to the final step, which is to add highlights. Okay, make sure you give your pen a really good shake if you've got a Posca pen. You can see there are white bricks and across here. So this is where hopefully all the details come out. Can't really see them as much here. There's lots of detail around there. Can come down some of these. And on the edge of, this will catch the light. Just thinking, where would the light catch? How about we do a nice outline on this? That, actually you can see that's quite nice. And we'll block that in like that section. Once this is dry, let's just add some reflections. Nice lines like this, just reflections. Okay, there you go. What do you think of the result? I really like it, but do you think I got enough depth with the dark, the contrasting values there? And the paper was really nice to use. I actually really enjoyed using it. But if you want the full version of this tutorial, it's a really long one. Go onto my Patreon. I put it there with a reference and a template. You can also email me for feedback. So that's the best way you can really learn, by following these tutorials step by step. Otherwise, we've got lots more tutorials here on YouTube, so check them down in this playlist right here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.